What initially sold me on SIGNALIS was the heavy inspiration on a certain beloved source for its general design and presentation. So it's nothing less than ironic for me to say that my main problem with it stems from its core being based on an orgy of popular media. Living on the fringe of popular obscurity, Blame is a manga that is mostly associated by Reflex for its brutal sci-fi megastructures and rampant cyberpunk consequences. I am somewhat obliged to mention Nascence, the only other thing to my knowledge that tried its hand at an interpretation of the setting, solely focusing on the architectural aesthetic. It might be of bad taste, but I could never finish it, as the broader concept wasn't enough to keep me engaged until the end, so I can only speculate on how it ultimately unfolds. One could also build a case for Rain World, for the decrepit and giant sprawling world angle, but that's a topic for another time. Even then, Blame is more than the bestness of its constructs. It speaks of transhumanism, the unconscious disarray of technology, and the final result of it all. Signalis not only brings the aesthetic, but its themes, all presented in an equal esoteric arrangement that I can guarantee you I absolutely fuck with at the highest level possible. What then of my adverse reaction to all of it? The homage boundary is usually stretched thin when you challenge the novel idea of mixing all your favorites together, with hope that such thing can only produce something that is of equal or better value than each of its individual parts. And when there are more than a few familiar sources together, it is hard to separate the resulting blend from its exact origins. But is that a bad thing? Concepts are bound to repeat themselves. Can something be truly new nowadays? What is originality but something that time forgot? Maybe I'm overthinking it, and it's all a coincidence. Vague concepts that my mind decided to conveniently trace relatable patterns over. In strange settings, familiarity is often applied as an easy way for cohesion, something recognizable amidst the chaos that you can identify for a sense of security. If it's not obvious at the first glimpse, the world of Signalis is not one of comfort, despite the initial complexity from its heavy array of concepts presented right from the start. The main plot thread is not that hard to follow. After just a few hours, I already had a fairly good grasp at what it was trying to convey. While the symbiosis between Replicant and Gestalt is the crux of the plot, the story spends the majority of its 8 to 10 hour playthrough building itself by exploring the surrounding nature of the Replicants, the synthetic life created to help humanity. Of course, tragedy soon follows. The story is one of its strong points, so I'll refrain from going into further details. Its depth does not come from complexity, but the way that it's presented. From the low render resolution to the dense techno-speak infused into every screen, the malfunctioning and unreliable visuals are not just an aesthetic choice, but used in tandem to tell the story, which is further supported by the various gameplay systems, all contrasting with the originally clean and sterile environments that contain the journey, now corrupted by time and whatever else. The authoritarian overuse of the Germanic language is also a great stylistic choice, as the trope usually defaults to Asian-based languages as intimidating means of isolating the player from its surroundings. I personally find it to be much more effective when applied with the other Indo-European languages, as it leaves you with enough familiarity to try to make sense of the closely sounding loose words. Of course, this is not something that can be replicated to everyone who plays it, as if someone is fluent in German, their experience might lose some of its mystery, but it's still appreciated. While covered in a foreboding atmosphere at all times, I'm pleased by the lack of cheap startles. Besides enemies screaming into alert by your presence, there's no cats coming out of lockers or pianos being played out of nowhere with louder than usual sounds. It respects you in exchange for your attention, as it tries to tell you a story with the sinister nature of the narrative being enough to fill the horror quota for the game. As for the gameplay itself, we get the certified shit is fucked and all doors are locked business, but the style of the presentation is so slick that it's hard not to love it, at least in its first impressions. Don't get me wrong, Signalis has what might be the best puzzles in the genre. There wasn't even one that left me dissatisfied by the end, with that peak eureka moment always arriving at the right time, with the puzzle boundaries never cast too wide to make it frustratingly vague. I don't know how they did it, but damn they did. While scavenging for your objective, you have your ever-growing arsenal of weapons that all feel great to shoot, applying the aiming subsystem of Resident Evil 2 Remake, where the longer you concentrate your aim before shooting, the bigger the damage. Which might leave you in this conundrum of wanting to shoot everything, but at the same time, it's a survival horror game, so you want to conserve your ammunition. At least until diplomacy is no longer an option. There's also a toggle option for free aim, but I found it more of an hindrance than a blessing in all of the situations I tried it on. It is highly possible that I'm just bad at video games, so take that with a pinch of salt. By the time you're watching, it's probable that this was already adjusted, but even then, I find it important to mention how the game was originally designed. The inventory is limited to 6 slots. I know of the number's importance in its context, and I also know that managing resources is one of the keystones of the genre. But I aggressively rolled my eyes every time I was one measly item over the limit and was forced to drag my ass over to the nearest storage box. I am not saying anything that wasn't said before, and I bet the team is tired of hearing of it. But the photo and flashlight modules could be an upgrade instead of separate items. Are you telling me that the protagonist can record hundreds of text files natively, but needs a separate SD card for 6 photos? I quickly realized that alt-tabbing for a print screen was easier than losing one inventory slot, even though the photo interface is pretty cool. Something that doesn't even have a simple roundabout solution is the flashlight, which is just too precious to store away, so together with your main gun, that's only 4 slots left for everything else. There are other small details that only get more noticeable when you start counting how frequent they are. Like grabbing items doesn't freeze time. This is all fine and dandy for creating tension, but if you don't know how the balance works and you're trying to save ammunition, trying to dance between the enemies just to take damage for 2 handgun bullets doesn't feel great. Especially when you're furiously mashing the interaction button, but the delay leaves you vulnerable for a couple of too many frames. It's even better when you go to grab bullets and discover that you have a limit to how many you can hold at the same time, leaving you even more confused in the heat of the moment as to why you didn't grab them. The enemy variety could be further expanded, but my only real complaint about them is that they should have different screams depending on the model. I believe that will help in making them unique and easier to distinguish. I also found myself getting hurt way too often because of the way doors work. It's mostly because the enemies take too long to wander away from doors after a pursuit, but also if you return too quickly to the previous room, the walking through the door animation is too long and always gives them ample time to get a free hit in. Something that I wish I would realize faster is how wide most of the corridors actually are. You can easily dodge most of the enemies by going down, but I thought the wall limit was shorter to force you to engage with the threat, which led me to never actually trying to go further down. That one is entirely on me. The latter of Chapter 2 is what probably is going to stop me from replaying it more often. Maybe it will be more bearable with the inventory expansion, but even then, the chaotic door transitions, coupled with a multi-level area without a map, is a bit too much. If you dare to stop midway, it takes courage to go back without remembering what you are doing. Considering the story implications, I guess there's nothing to do to alleviate the problem, but I wouldn't mind the protagonist drawing the map as she went along. Like in the end of Silent Hill 3. The game already likes to dwell on old technologies, a bit of pen and paper certainly wouldn't hurt. In the end, does the outcome make it sufficiently unique to be considered original? It really doesn't matter. I've been looking forward to its release for years, and in the process I inherently developed a fondness for something different from what was already trying to do. It's a terrific game with a beautifully haunting story told in such an intriguing way that will let people talk about it for years, or until someone makes a multiple-hour video explaining it. The gameplay is not without its caveats, but they will probably be either adjusted or forgotten, beyond all the brilliant moments that make it all worth it in the end. We might never escape our cycles of guilt, but at least my legs are okay.